Hello and welcome to Building Generative AI Experiences for the Enterprise on Google Cloud. Today's webinar is sponsored by Glean and Google Cloud and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Scott Becker. I'm from Actual Tech, and I am excited to be your moderator for this special event. Now, before we get to today's great session, we do have a few housekeeping items that are going to help you get the most out of this session. First off, we want this to be an informative event for you, so we encourage any questions in the questions box in your webinar control panel. So not only will we have team members responding to questions during the live event, but we'll also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the presentation where we'll discuss in greater detail some of the top questions that you ask. That Q&A panel is also the place to let us know about any technical issues that you might be experiencing. A browser refresh will fix most audio, video, or slide advancement issues. But if that doesn't work, just let us know in the Q&A and we'll provide further technical assistance. Now, second, in the handout section of your webinar control panel, you'll find that we're offering several resources. I'd especially like to call your attention to 4 resources there. 2 are PDFs. One is on Glean Enterprise and Knowledge Discovery, and the other is a case study on Glean featuring Confluent. Then there are 2 URLs as well. One links to a Forrester Total Economic Impact study on Glean. The other is about agentic reasoning and the future of work AI. So I encourage you to access all of those great resources now. Feel free to share them with friends and colleagues who'd be interested. Now, third, at the end of this webinar event, we'll be awarding a $250 Amazon gift card to one lucky registrant. Of course, you must be in attendance during the live event to qualify for the prize. Official terms and conditions of today's prize drawing can be found in the handout section. Just scroll to the bottom and you'll find the link with the details there. Okay, with that housekeeping out of the way, let's get to today's fantastic session. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters today. We have Sandhya Simhan, who's a product marketing manager with Glean, and we have Christian Williams, who's principal AI and ML architect with Google Cloud. So I'm going to turn things over to Sandhya to get us started.
All right, thanks, Scott. Hi, folks. My name is Sandhya. I'm here on the Glean team, and I'd love to share a little bit about what we do here. So, Glean is work AI for all. It connects and understands all of your enterprise data so that everyone in your company can find information, generate trusted answers, and automate work grounded in your company knowledge. So Glean was founded in 2019 by a team of Google search and industry experts who thought, hey, in our personal lives, we can find whatever information we need at our fingertips. Why don't we have the same at work? And it turns out this is something customers want. We've had tremendous growth over the past several years, more than tripling ARR in the past year, and we're funded by top-tier investors and have best-in-case adoption of our product. Glean's uniquely positioned because it starts with being able to find and understand whatever information we need. Then we can work with generative AI to summarize, analyze, and create content. And as we become more advanced with our AI usage, AI can actually work for us, automating our personal tasks and completing more complex multi-step workflows on our behalf. But what really makes Glean unique is that we approach AI at work as if it was a horizontal platform, sitting across all of your data sources. We power the world's leading organizations, and our customers drive real business outcomes with Glean. And now I'd like to hand it over to Christian to chat a little bit about Vertex AI.
Thank you, Sandhya and team. We're really excited about this partnership, and I'm personally thrilled to be here with you all today. Now, I'd like to start off by quickly introducing you to Google Cloud's machine learning platform, also known as Vertex AI. I think this will be helpful when we discuss our joint architecture later on. Okay, so what is Vertex AI? Vertex AI is your one-stop shop for all things AI. You can think of it as a comprehensive toolbox that simplifies your machine learning workflow with a unified API and user interface. And what I'm showing on the slide right now is essentially the core capabilities encapsulated in 3 boxes. The first one is the agent builder capability. This lets you easily create conversational AI agents like chatbots and virtual assistants, complete with advanced features like intent recognition and dialogue management. The second box is the model builder capability, which essentially empowers you to build custom machine learning models using popular frameworks like TensorFlow and PyTorch. And the last one is the model garden capability that gives you access to a wide range of pre-trained models, including foundational models like Gemini. These can be used for tasks like image recognition, natural language processing, and code generation. Now, with that high-level overview of Vertex AI, let's dive deeper into the overall platform. Now, this slide showcases a 30,000-foot overview, highlighting how we streamline the entire machine learning workflow with a single environment. And if you imagine this from the perspective of a customer, let's assume a retailer, you can leverage this platform to perform predictive sales analysis, right? Utilize time series analysis and forecasting models for optimized inventory management. Or let's assume you would like to personalize recommendations. You can employ collaborative filtering and content-based systems to enhance customer experience. Or maybe you want to automate customer support. You can implement an AI agent with natural language understanding for efficient query resolution. And here's how it works. As you see in the second layer, we have the data foundation in place. So we show you LODB and BigQuery here, which provides robust data storage and analysis. We have the AI development, which is comprised of Vertex AI. That's the section that we will focus on today, which relates to building, training, deploying models, and includes the MLOps portion as well. Then we have actionable insights. That's accomplished by utilizing Looker, which is essentially a visualization tool. And then we have security and compliance and accelerated performance by providing you with TPUs and GPUs for faster training and inference. Now, essentially, this platform, coupled with our Glean partnership, democratizes AI and makes it accessible to users of all technical levels. Now, looking at the next slide, you'll see that another core component of the platform is to make sure that we provide you with unparalleled choices and flexibility for your AI needs, and doing all of that while avoiding vendor lock-in. These are 5 examples of how we make sure that there's no vendor lock-in and that you have all the freedom that you need as you embark on your AI projects. The first pillar is what we call data freedom, meaning you have access to your data across any cloud or on-premises with BigQuery, Google Cloud Storage, and Omni. The second pillar is the option of compute capacity. So you can optimize performance and cost by using TPUs, GPUs, and accelerators depending on your needs. Thirdly, we have framework support. So there's a variety of tools available to you, as I mentioned previously, TensorFlow, PyTorch, XGBoost, JAX, frameworks, and so forth. We have a variety of models, which is number 4. You can leverage the cutting-edge models like Gemini and Imagine, or you can also explore pre-trained models in Model Garden, which includes first and third-party models. And then lastly, you can build agents with frameworks that are readily available, such as Llama Index or LangChain. However, to fully leverage the power of Google's open ecosystem, let's dive into Retrieval Augmented Generation, also known as RAG, and how it enables flexible and customizable AI solutions. Now, when we talk about Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, most people know that this is a very powerful technique for accessing and processing information. However, it can be fairly labor-intensive, and what I'm showing here is the steps that are usually required to get to the final RAG pipeline. It usually starts off with data preparation. So we need to identify what are the data sources, and there could be a variation of sources within your organization, publicly available. This could include documents, databases, websites, and more. Once we have identified the sources, we need to identify what we do in terms of extracting and transforming the data. Common example is, let's assume you have documents, you need to have some sort of OCR capabilities, optical character recognition, to essentially convert the picture into text. And then you need to use some cleaning or transformation mechanism, usually NLP techniques, to filter or like streamline the data for further processing. And then lastly, you need to think about how do I segment the data, what we call chunking into smaller pieces that then are optimized for retrieval efficiency and also optimized for the LLM's context window. Because depending on your downstream LLM, some can take a larger context window and some can't. Once we have identified the data preparation, we go to the next step, which is creating the embeddings. And the idea behind the embeddings is to create a semantic representation of the text that we just chunked previously. Once the embeddings are done, we then get into the vector indexing and search optimization. So this is where we think about how do we make sure that we have efficient retrieval mechanisms in place, how do we run the queries themselves, and how do we identify candidates of these chunks that are relevant to our context. And that's essentially what the fourth step is, where we contextualize and create the actual response. So we rank the results that we receive from the chunking based on relevance, source authority, and other factors. And then we assemble the context with these chunks that we retrieved, and then create the actual prompt and the actual output. Now, I'm telling you all of this because I'd like to highlight the fact that building a RAG system is fairly complex and labor intensive. And to make all of this a little bit easier, we have a tool which we call Vertex AI Search. So instead of building from scratch the whole RAG architecture, you can use that out of the box and use a fully managed service that abstracts away many of the complexities, such as the data processing. So what we just talked about, the ETL, the OCR, the chunking, is all automated. It also simplifies the embedding and indexing, meaning there's no need to manage complex vector databases, as Vertex AI Search provides a scalable and effective vector search out of the box. What's also provided out of the box is optimized search, so you don't need to worry about how do you do similarity searching, and also out of the box built-in summarization. So I think you can see that this clearly demonstrates how Vertex AI Search greatly simplifies the development of sophisticated RAG applications. However, in addition to simplifying the creation of these sophisticated pipelines, we also need to make sure that our data returned is factual, fresh, and transparent in terms of sources. Now, this is what I'm explaining in the slide here, where we talk about grounding the LLMs. And by grounding, we're referring to connecting the LLM to real-world data and more accurate and informative responses. So there are 5 capabilities that relate to the grounding functionality. The first one is what we call high-fidelity grounding. It's essentially ensuring that the highest levels of factuality in the responses are chosen. And as you can imagine, this is super critical for areas like healthcare or finance, where you really can't have any hallucinations or any sort of embellishing of truth, so to speak. The second one is grounding your data, meaning we take your data and connect the LLM to it. So there might be your private data and ground it in that. The third one is grounding with Google Search. This is a unique feature to Google Cloud. It essentially enables you to tap into Google Search results for up-to-date public knowledge and ground it with that. Then we have grounding with third-party data. So this is where you get access to specialized data sets from providers like Moody's and many more. And then we have dynamic retrieval, which is a really interesting concept. The idea is that the system intelligently decides if external information is needed. And why would you do that? Because that optimizes for cost, factuality, and also latency. Because sometimes you really want to keep the latency to the smallest amount possible. And if you run a lot of API calls for grounding, it might actually increase the latency as you get the final response from the system. So to reiterate again, the key benefits here is improved factuality, access to fresh information that's up to date, and also citation tracking for transparency and trust. Now we've explored a variety of topics. We talked about Vertex AI, as you recall in the very beginning, RAG architectures, and connecting your LLMs to data. Lastly, let's dive into customizing these models for peak performance. And I'd like to show you 3 capabilities that may be of interest to you. The first one is the Vertex Prompt Optimizer. So this essentially automates the refinement of your prompts using techniques like prompt engineering and reinforcement learning for better results. The second one is supervised fine-tuning, which essentially enables you to take your Gemini model and train it on your specific targeted data set. And the last one is distillation, which enables you to create a smaller, more efficient version of Gemini. And this is ideal for deployment on resource-constrained devices. So I see a lot of examples where customers want to deploy this on edge devices. And this is a fairly frequent use case where you use distillation to reduce the size of the model, reduce the footprint in terms of resource utilizations. Okay, now let's discover how Google Cloud and Glean work together to leverage these powerful features. Over to you, Sandhya.
All right. Thanks, Christian. Now, as you guys know, Google Cloud plus Glean is definitely better together. Our partnership starts when Glean was first being built with Google DNA. We've been exclusively hosted on GCP from day one, offering GCP, Cloud Prem, and SaaS models, and we were built 100% using GCP infrastructure. And we know our clients see the immediate benefits as well. They're getting faster time to value. They don't have to worry about data leaving their project. We're helping them burn down their commits. And because we have marketplace licenses or Cloud Prem compute, they can make sure that GCP acts as the data processor and is compliant with all the security needs that they need. Now, I'm sure some of you are wondering, let's get into the details. How does this really work? Well, let's walk through a query. The user begins by asking a question, such as, what's the latest on Project X? The system needs to process this input efficiently. Glean is set up to leverage Gemini models on Google Vertex AI to interpret and fulfill these requests, ensuring accurate response generation. Next, we go into tool selection and query planning. This step involves selecting the tools and planning the queries needed to answer the user's question. Here we use Gemini 1.5 Flash to play a critical role and use it for both tool selection and the follow-up question generation. The model helps in determining what combination of tools, whether it's internal databases, AI models, specific data sources via connectors, whatever's required to effectively gather the needed information. And then we are headed to the Glean Planner, which works in coordination with the Google Vertex AI models. Specifically, Gemini 1.5 Pro here is used to assist with query planning and answer generation. This planner optimizes how the queries will be executed and contributes to just overall efficiency in the process. Then we generate queries for information retrieval. Based on the plan, appropriate queries are generated to collect information. Google Vertex AI is instrumental here, with Gemini models helping informing well-structured queries. Additionally, capacity requirements for requests per minute and tokens per minute have to be managed according to quotas set up on Google Vertex AI to ensure that sufficient capacity is available during high-load scenarios. Then we're back to our friend Vertex, which plays a pivotal role in inference and processing during this step. The Gemini models, 1.5 Pro and Flash, help in various inference tasks, such as understanding user queries, determining the appropriate actions to take. The step also involves ensuring that the application default credentials are used for secure access to the models without adding manual authentication. Next up, we have the query execution component, which runs the queries formulated in the planning stage. This module interacts with the Glean index and knowledge graph to fetch the relevant information. The text embedding Gecko model from Google Vertex AI is also involved in matching sentences and generating citations, ensuring that the information that's been retrieved actually relates to the user's query. After the information is fetched, it's filtered through the governance engine and doc red listing module. This ensures compliance with data security protocols and policies that the clients put in place. Vertex AI Data Governance Guide is used to handle issues related to that privacy of data and caching, as well as to ensure that customer data is not accidentally used for model training. Then we have our intelligent data selector, which refines the data set further by filtering out less relevant information. Now, this process helps the Gemini models focus only on high-quality data and ensures that the information used in the subsequent steps is meaningful and useful to the user. Finally, we're on to answer generation. This module uses 1.5 Pro to synthesize the answer based on the filtered information. It helps generate coherent, high-quality responses. And here, this is where we really make sure that token usage is carefully managed, and costs can actually be estimated using Google's pay-as-you-go pricing model for LLMs, which takes into account both input and output tokens. Then back to our friend Vertex AI, where we ensure that the generated answer is fluent, relevant, and adheres to safety standards. And really, the use of Gemini models at all of these multiple stages guarantees that the output meets the required quality standards, both from an accuracy point of view and a consistency. Then the response generated by the model is validated for consistency and accuracy. And during this stage, caching may be used to accelerate future prompts by leveraging previously processed data, which remains cached for up to 25 hours by default, unless explicitly disabled by the customer. Finally, the assistant delivers the validated response to the user and answers their initial question. Here are the latest updates on Project X. This entire process that I've described is one based on the Gemini models and Google Vertex AI's infrastructure. But if we wanted to say use Anthropic instead, you could use Anthropic's Claude 3.5 Sonnet, similar to 1.5 Pro for query planning and answer generation, and Claude 3 Haiku, similar to Gemini 1.5 Flash for tool selection and follow-up questions. So AI-powered search is this magical mix of Glean and Google Cloud. What we see is that our customers have enhanced productivity, they have seamless integration, they're getting fantastic generative AI insights, and they're leaning into trusted knowledge models because it's all based on their own data. So we'd love to hear from you. Help us put AI to work at your work. Sign up for a demo with our sales team to see how Glean and Google Cloud can help you unleash the power of work AI for all. Thanks. Back to you, Scott.
All right, great stuff. Really interesting walkthroughs there on on both sides. Super. So, Christian, Sanday, you guys ready for some questions?
Absolutely.
All right, great. Sandy, I think this first one is for you. They're asking, what's the benefit of a centralized platform like Glean over more department-specific AI tools?
Yeah, so that's actually a question we get a lot. A lot of companies right now, they tend to sort of just up-level their existing enterprise software into, and adding on the AI feature or AI layer or add-on. And what that happens is you're just perpetuating your data silos. And because of that, you have a certain amount of fragmentation that's just being maintained. And what happens is, as each of those layers of AI get more expensive, all you're doing is sort of increasing the cost of maintaining your data in those separate systems without actually enabling how they're going to work together. When you have a centralized platform, the biggest sort of key benefit is, you're amortizing costs in an expensive AI ecosystem, but also you have a unified management interface for all of your AI initiatives. And so the system that, if somebody's using, let's say Jira and Salesforce, your sales team is doing stuff in Salesforce, your engineering team is doing something in Jira. If you're buying the AI layers on top of those are great. And it might be specific to what that particular department needs, but then they're not going to be able to talk to each other. And so if there's a solution that the sales team has built and the engineering team wants to take advantage of it, they're not going to be able to do that. And that's sort of the power of a centralized platform, is like you ultimately have one space. I like to think of it as a little bit sort of, when we had lots of data in lots of places, you needed to create like data warehouses and data lakes to be able to sort of manage that information and sort of control the flow of it. And similarly now in, the centralized AI platform is sort of the next evolution of it in the AI era.
Okay. All right. Tremendous. Thanks. This next question, we had a request from the audience. Can you send that QR code again? By the time I got my phone ready, I missed it. Let me pop that back up there. We certainly can. And I just have to say, this is the coolest QR code I've ever seen. I've never seen a dinosaur in the middle of a QR code before. Very nice.
Thanks. Our marketing team likes to be creative.
Outstanding. Christian, I think this next one is for you. The question is why is RAG a common framework used when we have large context windows with Gemini?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to answer that. So it's a common question, as probably many of you know, the context windows are getting larger and larger. For Gemini, currently we have a 2 million input token context window, but there's still a couple of use cases where you might want to use a RAG instead of fully saturating the context window. The first one is if you need to go beyond that window, right? I mean, I know 2 million sounds like a lot. If you roughly estimate it, it's probably 6,000 pages, but sometimes you might want to inject information from a whole library, right? So that's one use case where you might still use RAG. Another one is the fact that your data might be dynamic and changing frequently, because you have to remember the context window that you have, even though it's very large in size, is essentially bound to the checkpoint of the latest version of the trained foundational model, right? And sometimes you need to update that. You recall during the presentation, we also talked about grounding through Google search, which is another way of, updating or injecting more up-to-date information to the model. And then lastly, it's about cost and efficiency. While you can use very large context windows, they can become cost prohibitive if you submit millions of tokens every time. And there will also most likely be a lot of latency that's not acceptable to the end user, right? If you need to wait a couple of seconds, maybe 10, 15 seconds, that might be too much for some applications. And lastly, maybe another thing that I probably should highlight is the fact that with RAG, you have a benefit that you can actually explain the output to a certain extent, because you can reference the chunks. Remember, as we talked through the RAG pipeline, that have been retrieved and are considered to be relevant to the question, you can pinpoint to them and say, hey, that answer was comprised based off text chunks, 1 to 5 from the library, and you can retrace that. So these are the 4 common use cases why RAG is still in the window, right, so to speak.
Gotcha. Yeah. And that reference point, I mean, those are all great points, but that references point is so important. Just being able to track where did this answer come from, and then you can dig into that document yourself. Let's see, Sendai, there's another question for you here. Does Glean have agents?
We do. So agents is sort of a little bit of a weird word. The industry hasn't really established a industry-wide standard for what that word means. But at Glean, we really take agents to mean, hey, it's a piece of code that allows you to sort of have a set of inputs. It processes them. It allows you to interact with that data, and then ultimately can create an action on your behalf. And so when we started Glean in 2019, it was very focused on search. But as we've kind of grown and adapted, we've added lots of other features. And so ultimately now our agent framework really lives within our apps and actions features, and it allows people to create sort of, with using no code, it allows them to create sort of mini bots and agents that interact with the company data and then also with external data, and then be able to take actions on your behalf.
Okay, yeah. And speaking of agents, I think one of the handouts has to do with, there's a blog post.
That's right, yes. We have our agentic reasoning blog, which is it's a little different. You're speaking to agents as a concept. You're speaking to agents as a tool. Agentic reasoning is a little bit more around, how do we think through, like how does the Glean model actually answer your questions in a more rigorous way? And so that's a great read as well. But if you have other questions, definitely check out our Glean blog. We have some posts about our agents and apps and actions.
Okay. All right. Super. Next question is, it looks like for Christian. They're wondering, can you give a practical example of how Google search grounding enhances an AI's capabilities in Vertex AI?
Absolutely. Happy to do that. And we actually touched upon it a little bit in the previous answer when we talked about context windows. Because as you recall, the Google search grounding can essentially enhance the output that your, for example, agent creates. Right? A very common example is if you have the good old customer service chatbot, and let's assume you're selling products, and maybe there was a recent product recall that just happened maybe a day or two ago. by grounding your answers in Google search, you would be able to, first of all, identify that this is the case without retraining the foundational model or your base model. And secondly, potentially also link to remedies, right? This is a form where you could guide the customer towards to tell him or her, hey, this is how you actually go through the recall or get the replacement part, whatever that may be. So this is one example of using Google search grounding, not just to enhance the output, but also to update it, to the most recent events or product returns or whatever it may be for your specific use case.
Okay. All right. Excellent. There's another question here. And I'm not sure which one of you would be better to answer that. They're wondering what Google Cloud services such as BigQuery or Dataflow can optimize Glean's data processing and analytics functions. So I'll just throw that open to both of you.
That is a great question. I would say that I'm probably not the right person to answer it. Christian, if you want to take a stab.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm also not necessarily on the data side of things, but I think we would need to have a follow-up question here, because when you say optimize Glean's data processing and analytics functions, are we referring to ETL or displaying the data itself? Just at the very high level, you can do all of these things inside of BQ, which is our serverless data warehouse, right? Or Dataflow, which is essentially managed Spark, if you will, through ETL scripts. So I think we would need a little bit more information on what exactly is meant by data processing, because that could be a lot.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And Paul, if you want to just plug that in, we'll keep an eye out for it, and we can always return to that. Christian, another question for you. Wondering, can you give an example of a specific task where I might use a model from the model garden?
Absolutely. So the idea behind the model garden is for you to quickly find machine learning models specific to a task, right? So you can search inside model garden for specific modalities. That could be text only, speech to text, or multimodalities. And you essentially then have a choice to pick between first-party and third-party models. And the very common use case that we see is, let's assume you work in the media and entertainment space and you would like to create something like automatically generated captions for images. Back in the good old days, most people built their own convolutional neural network to do so. Today, you go into Model Garden and essentially pick and choose based on your preference from a variety of first-party or third-party models that you then can take and also fine-tune to your specific needs, right? Because just to give you one example, I worked with a customer in the music industry, and the idea was to take these images and then create captions for the images, but that specific brand has specific products, right? And obviously these pictures look different than the stock images. So then you use like a couple hundred pictures of that specific provider to fine-tune that model for their specific niche of, let's say, maybe guitars or drums or whatever it is. So this is the idea. Instead of doing the work yourself and training a model from the ground up, you start in a model garden by choosing pre-existing models and then, if necessary, fine-tune them for your use case.
Okay. Awesome. Sindai, this one's, I think, for you. Can you share more about how Glean creates the knowledge graph?
Yeah. So our knowledge graph is essentially a comprehensive model, and it includes basically 4 key components. So you have the actual content, right? So this is your documents, your messages, your Jira tickets, we call them entities. And so you have all of this enterprise content, and we make it searchable and referenceable. And that's typically what most companies do for enterprise search. Where we start sort of, where Glean sort of has its differentiator is then you start linking in your people data. So it's not just about, what a person does or their like role on the team, but what their role is, but it's also like what team are they in, what departments, what groups, what projects. Like if there's a PM that I'm constantly working with, stuff that he comes up with is probably going to be higher ranked for me than something a different PM I've never spoken to is going to come up with. Then you have actual activity. So who created it, who edited it, comments, searches, clicks. So this is the type of data that gets really crucial for personalization and relevance. And this helps Glean understand what people actually want to see in terms of user behavior and preferences. And then we have the last is sort of like links and relationships. And so kind of having these fundamental pieces, Glean then models the connections between these different items in the graph. And so it's like, hey, this message is referring to this document. So if I'm asking a question about this Slack, it might be there might be a reference to this file as well. And so I should pull that into what the RAG then, shares with the model in order to be able to create answers. So that's the kind of very top line view. I think we have a couple blog posts about it if someone's interested in hearing more, though.
Okay, excellent. Next question, Beatrice, is also for you. Or I'm sorry, Santa is also for you. This one is coming from Beatrice. Just asking, what title should I invite to a demo meeting? I'm not the decision maker or technical expert, but I am influencing the use case. I get one shot at this and don't want to miss the opportunity to include all I should as well as I can.
Yeah, that's a great question. If you are interested in a demo, we highly recommend having somebody who has basically admin access to at least 1 to 3 of the tools that you want to be pulling in. We do offer the capability to do pilots and trials. And oftentimes where this gets stuck is where marketing or HR or legal or finance get really excited about using Glean, but then struggle to find the right person with the right authority to be able to actually connect all the data sources to make it valuable. So if you know who that is in your company and you're a relatively small company, that's where we go for it. If you're a little bit larger company, feel free to just come and chat with us and we can help you find the right person.
Okay, excellent. Christian, this next one is digging down a little bit more into grounding. So this comes from Victor, who's wondering, is grounding in grounding for relevant results, how do you prioritize the sources? Is the enterprise source always taken first, even with possible conflicts from other sources, such as third-party professional sources or the World Wide Web, et cetera?
Yeah, this is a great question. So that's actually one of the benefits of grounding through Google Search, because the model itself prioritizes sources based on factors that are very similar to how Google Search itself ranks the results. And you may know many of them, right? There's relevance scoring, which is basically how relevant is that source to the query that I ask. There's also a scoring for the authority, meaning how authoritative are the sources. And that's usually determined by expertise or trustworthiness or backlinks, as you know. Then there's the quality of the link itself. So this is also kind of evaluated, meaning is it error-free and is it clear and organized, accurate grammar, spelling, right? Could also be an indication of the quality of the source itself. And then we have freshness itself. How up-to-date is it, or when was it last updated? And then, of course, we have user context, right? Meaning where does the source come from in terms of locations, past history, et cetera, et cetera. And that's the basic idea. You get all of that built in automatically when you ground through Google Search and Vertex AI.
Okay, excellent. And Cinta, I think this one's for you. This comes from Ned, who's asking, what specific steps or processes does Glean recommend for organizations to establish visibility and governance over their use of AI across the enterprise?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest factors, so we talk a lot about our AI maturity curve and sort of moving people along that. And what I think a lot of people where a lot of companies stumble is that understanding your position and really knowing that you have enabled your AI-centric employees is really critical to becoming an AI-centric company. And so it's only when that maturity grows that capabilities actually increase. And so if you don't have, I don't think anybody has like a complete lack of AI policy at this point, but, if it's highly discouraged, you don't have any company sanctioned tools. What's happening is that it's not that they're not using those tools, it's that you don't know about it. And so one of the best things you can do is sort of say, hey, like we would love to hear and sort of put out that open knowledge or put out that open request and say, hey, we'd love to hear about how you as individuals in the company want to be able to use AI. Like, where do you like come to us with recommendations? And then what you're going to start seeing is like, hey, this particular department is like really over indexing in potential AI champions. And so let me start finding solutions that meet their needs. So, and that might be, a very department specific tool, that works for them. And that's great. Eventually, as you move along the curve, you'll need to find and you'll need to centralize and, build out a more robust set of frameworks that help you sort of not just deal with, okay, I'm not only using AI, I'm also able to monitor it. I'm able to make sure that there's no data leaking into things that aren't supposed to. But if you say no, if you put a blanket no, like that's not going to actually do much. And so if you want to start creating that visibility and governance, it's really critical that you're listening to your employees, hearing what they actually want to use AI for, and then enabling the right specific tools that can then be, purchased with enterprise grade software. The nice part about Glean is that we sort of help people move through that funnel. So Miro is a great example of this. They started using us because they wanted their people to stop using ChatGPT on their personal accounts. And so they started with a little pilot. Eventually we went wall to wall, and we're now actually embedded in their products such that they're using like the Glean APIs and bringing that contextual knowledge graph into the actual Miro whiteboards. And so that's sort of how you can move along the AI curve, but it's really important that you do it in a way that allows the people who actually want to be early adopters to, sort of lean in. The other thing I will say is that just because engineering is using GitHub Copilot and is moving straight ahead, like just because you've solved that bottleneck doesn't mean you're going to solve the entire process bottleneck. All that means is one part of the process is moving faster. So yes, it might be faster to get the code out, but that doesn't necessarily mean that, QA is moving faster, that marketing is able to create more assets, that sales is able to, provide those assets to the right accounts. And so when you think about AI deployment, it's not just, hey, how am I improving this one particular department across all use cases? You also have to think, how am I improving this entire process of getting, say, a feature to market? So just be wary of that and make sure you're picking tools and platforms that allow you to sort of track that a process from end to end, because that helps build credibility with your senior leadership.
Okay, excellent. Well, I think that's going to be a great place to leave it. Zendaya and Christian, thank you both for coming on, and I mean, this has been a really fascinating discussion about something really important that I know a lot of us are interested in right now. So thanks for the presentation and for all your insights in the Q&A here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. And our last piece of business for the day, other than a quick reminder about all the resources there in the handouts, it's your last chance to grab those before we wrap up. But the last piece of business is the Amazon gift card prize drawing. And the winner of that $250 Amazon gift card today is Christian Velasquez from Arkansas. So congratulations to Christian. We'll be in touch to get you your card. And with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to thank Glean and Google Cloud for making this event possible. And thanks as always for attending and for all of your great questions. That's going to conclude today's event. Have a fantastic rest of your day.